All right. It looks like we are all here in the webinar space, so we can go ahead and get started. Um, First off, thank you everyone for joining us today for this EcoCareers Summit. We're excited to have you and to delve into the transportation sector here with our lovely panelists. To kick us off, my name is Anita Singh from the National Wildlife Federation. I am a field educator here, and I have had the pleasure of working closely with Sarah T this year on our Eco Green program. And I will be moderating this career panel. As I mentioned, it's focused on careers in transportation. And the transportation sector is wide and vast, from moving goods and people, as well as related industries, such as automobile manufacturing. It's a major economic driver, representing approximately 10% of the US labor force, according to the US Department of Transportation. It also represents a major opportunity to pursue sustainability and climate impacts. As the EPA notes that the transportation sector accounts for about 27% of US greenhouse gas emissions. In this panel, we'll be hearing from our 4 professionals here with us today with varied careers within the transportation sector and their advice to you all, students and young people, as you may be seeking to work towards a cleaner, greener transportation sector. We want to thank GM for sponsoring this panel. Among the other sustainability initiatives, such as increasing EV assembly capacity, investing in EV charging stations, climate equity projects, and sourcing energy from renewable energy sources, GM and the National Wildlife Federation have had a long-standing collaboration through our Eco Green Schools program, as I mentioned earlier, as well as our Climate Equity Collaborative that presented yesterday. The Eco Green program is a program that provides resources and support to hands-on environmental sustainable projects at K-12 schools across the country. And these projects, are ranging from wildlife habitat restoration to recycling programs to water preservation and onwards. So 3 of our panelists here are coming from General Motors, and we're happy to hear more about their experiences working within transportation. As each panelist is presenting, feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A box, and we will ask as many as we can after each panelist has presented. And so today we are going to get started with Sarah T. Sarah T is General Motors Senior Environmental Social Governance, ESG Strategies, Nature, and Packing Lead. Sarah focuses on identifying emerging ESG areas and develops sustainability programs and partnerships that advance GM's sustainability priorities. Sarah started at General Motors in 2014 as an environmental engineering intern at the CAMI assembly plant. In 2016, she returned as a global supply chain group leader, supervising more than 20 team members before moving into an environmental leader role focused on waste compliance, wastewater processes, and air regulatory reporting. In addition to this role, she supported improvements and implementation of more than 5 new wildlife habitat programs, led a multi-departmental site packaging working group, and contributed to the creation of a packaging guidance document used throughout the auto industry. Sarah earned her degree in chemical engineering with a focus in biochemical and environmental engineering from Western University, as a Master of Business Administration degree with business analytics concentration and a professional engineer license. Whew. We're so glad to have you here today, Sarah. And so please tell us a little bit more about your own career path and any advice you may have to young people interested in pursuing a similar career here as you've had in the transportation sector. Thank you,
Of
Sarah.
course, perfect. Thanks, Anita. I'm just going to quickly share my screen as well, just so that you guys have something to look at other than me. Let me share my screen. It's just an overview of pretty much everything you just said. Can you see? Let me just move you guys over.
Yeah, it looks like it's sharing properly.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Anita. So, hi everyone. My name is Sarah T. So happy to be here today to share my journey with you all. Just a little bit about me before I get started, though. So, I'm actually based in Canada, my hometown being in Toronto, Ontario. Some of the things that I enjoy doing outside of work for fun is food. I really do enjoy eating and trying different foods and different types of cuisines. Traveling to see the world. I just feel like there's so much out there to learn and explore. I also enjoy being outdoors, going camping during the summer. So that's coming up, doing yoga to de stress. And I also like to snowboard and read. So, just to jump right into it, in terms of my education, I attended the University of Western Ontario and got a chemical engineering degree. Funny enough, when I first started chemical engineering, I thought it had more to do with chemistry. I thought I was good at chemistry and wanted to do it. Turns out you really only end up taking like 2 to 3 chemistry courses. I did still enjoy it. I did the biochemical and environmental engineering option that we had available. And really, that just meant that I took a couple of specialized courses that were focused in on those areas. And then recently, just this last year, I finished my MBA, which is the Master's of Business Administration. And then I did this in the business analytics leadership stream. I decided to do this part time while working the last couple years, really because I enjoyed the one business class I did take during university and wanted to be able to understand what makes an overall business tick and just to kind of get a better picture of the business world overall. And then in terms of my actual career journey, so Anita already spoke to most of it. So, as she mentioned, I started off as an intern at one of GM's assembly plants as an environmental engineering intern. Really, I had such a positive experience. It was my first real job, I would say. I mean, I had jobs in high school here and there, but I would consider this my first real industry job and was kind of my stepping stone into GM. When I finished school, I worked for a short period at a construction company as a project coordinator, originally thinking that I really enjoyed the project work that I did as an intern. It didn't end up being a great fit, but it did lead me back to GM, where I then worked as a global supply chain group lead on the floor. Basically, what that means is I supervised 3 different teams and essentially had to ensure that the team was being productive and efficient with delivering parts to the line so that our production team could then carry out the assembly of the actual vehicle. And then from there, I ended back on the environmental team and stayed there for quite some time working as an environmental engineer. My major focus areas were waste, that took up the primary chunk of my time. I was largely responsible for ensuring we met our landfill free and then our zero waste goals for the specific plant that I was based out of. I helped to ensure wastewater operations optimization, making sure that everything was running smoothly. And then I also did some air compliance reporting, like greenhouse gas, as an example. I got to work on some pretty cool projects. I really enjoyed that position, but really I wanted to be able to make a bigger impact on the sustainability side for not just one plant but for like the organization as a whole. So that kind of led me to my current role now, working as the senior ESG strategies nature and packaging lead. And in my current role, I'm working on developing sustainability programs and truly developing those strategies in both the nature space and sustainable packaging space, as my title suggests. to help GM advance in our sustainability or priorities. So, all in all, my advice to you, if you're interested in pursuing a career in this space, is to not be afraid to go down different paths and explore different roles. You can kind of see from my journey that I've been all over the place myself. It's taken me some time to figure out me. I'm still trying to figure myself out. I'm still trying to figure out what my passions are, and that's completely okay. I think you'll end up in positions that you may not love. That's a reality, but at least you then figure out what aspects of the job you like or you don't like, and that's a good thing. And I think the last piece of advice that I have is to not forget about those soft skills, because I do think they are extremely important. Being able to network, communicate, and the behaviors you showcase is what will make you truly stand out. Really, you being you, not what's on a piece of paper. So, kind of keep that in mind, and also keep in mind to not be too hard on yourself all the time. That's all I've got. So, thanks everyone for your time and listening to my career journey.
Thank you, Sarah. That is beautiful and excellent advice. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your journey. We are going to switch next to Rebecca Nasre. Rebecca Nasre is an industrial electrician at General Motors and is one of 3 women electricians in a facility of approximately 60 electrical tradespersons. She has been with the corporation for almost 26 years, 2 of which she worked in assembly production and the rest in skilled trades. Rebecca is often involved in the full life cycle of a project, from the planning and layout phase to the actual fabrication and build of an electrical project. Throughout her career, she has worked on 13,800 volt substations. For reference, the plug in your home is about 120 volts, built and installed power distributed panels, and has worked in aerial lifts, 60 feet in the air, installing conduit and wires. Her daily routine typically involves troubleshooting robot and automation faults, teaching robots to improve quality, and streamlining the amount of time it takes to build the best vehicles. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. Sounds like a really badass career journey, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more from you. So please, share anything you would like to about your career journey with us, and for young people who are considering entering the trades. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me here today. Can you guys all hear me really well? Yes, good. Okay. Just a little bit about myself on a personal level outside of work. Just like Sarah was talking, I absolutely adore camping. Camping has been like in my life for many years, and then traveling. So as soon as I get outside of work, if we have nothing to do, we're in the car, we're driving somewhere, we're going to see something. I'm married. I'm a mother of 5 children. So we have a nice full household. All my children are all adults now. My youngest is actually in college right now. I have 2 in the service. One is actually copied my career. He's an electrician as well. And I have 2 that are in college. The 2 youngest are actually in college. To give you a little backstory of how I ended up on the skilled trades path, which is normally not something you hear from females. Usually that's something that is kind of intimidating to think about. But to get into this, just so that you're aware, when I started high school, I really focused on trying to be successful and choosing the courses that would have me excel well in college. So I chose a lot of college prep style classes. I didn't do perfectly in those classes, but that was okay. I wanted them on my transcript. I wanted to look good to all the universities when I applied. So in my junior and senior years, I worked with the school guidance counselor. I was looking for ways, to sign up for school and what career path was probably best fit for the grades that I had, which ended up was actually pre-med. So I initially started out pre-med. I got accepted to Eastern Michigan University. And to get a little bit more in depth, growing up in a household, we didn't make a whole lot of money, extra money growing up. So when it came to actually paying for school, it was something that my family was unable to actually support me. So I actually had to find a job outside of high school that was going to be able to pay for the college myself. So I decided at that point that I was going to step down and do college part-time and work full-time just so that I could get my dreams accomplished. So this is where I actually started with General Motors. They had a job posting for actually assembly line working positions. So I got that job at the end of that summer. I went through a whole testing process to make sure that, I was fit, that I was smart enough, passed the drug test, the normal things at job careers, that how you start out. So I did that. I worked the line. So here I am performing the same style assembly job and performing that task over and over and over, building the vehicles for General Motors. And then during normal operation, machines break down. So during these breakdowns, all of a sudden this crew would show up on the job and they would tackle these breakdowns. Tools would become flying out. These guys are working. They're all laughing. They're having a great time. I'm like, what the heck's going on? This is a breakdown. How come are these guys having a good time? So, they kind of intrigued me. A little bit later on down the line, we're working again. And all of a sudden I hear this machine come cruising down the aisle. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So, and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, it was actual aerial lift. And I see my first female skilled trades person actually in that lift. And so I started actually asking around, and that's when I actually learned what skilled trades were. I had no idea. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and that was not a career option that actually our high schools actually promoted at that particular time, back 26 years ago. So asking about that, I was pretty intrigued because I really liked their work ethic. I liked, everybody showing up, performing their magic. It was like a magic show. They literally showed up, did stuff that I had no idea what they were doing, and all of a sudden things were running. So it was just something that I really wanted to get into. So I really started searching, what skilled trades were and what it took to actually become one. So that's when I learned about starting an apprenticeship to start skilled trades. So I actually changed my career path at that time within 3 months of actually starting pre-med. I just had general studies, so I started my apprenticeship. So an apprenticeship, it was 4 years of hands-on learning. So you're working on with a journey person, hand by hand. You're actually working with them and going through that process. Also, I would spend 2 years of going to college afterward. One of the benefits of skilled trades doing an apprenticeship, not only do you get paid to be at work learning, they actually paid for my college for me and paid me to be there learning for the company. So what a better incentive for a household that couldn't afford college. So I took advantage of it, got my certificate, furthered my degree, and I have been doing this for 26 years. It's been fantastic. So not only did I finish and get my certificate, I did not have school debt. So here I was, 21 years old with a degree, making 6 figures. I had benefits, I had holidays, I had vacation, we had 401k, we had all these things that you really work years and years to get. And it was something that I actually had fun doing. So I've been doing this job for 26 years and it never gets boring. Every single breakdown is a puzzle. You're figuring out what it is, you fix it, you move on, and you learn from it. You try to create a process so that way it doesn't repeat, and you're always trying to make everything's better by driving that continuous improvement. Another thing with General Motors, I'm working at Factory Zero, which is in Detroit, Michigan, and that plant is an all-electric vehicle manufacturing facility. Not only with the skilled trades here at the plant, everything that we do, we recycle and reuse. So no matter as the year goes on, my job actually makes everything better. With fixing things and moving on, it's been very beneficial for my family and I. As an electrician, we install equipment and maintain the faults and running the best for teaching and performing those tasks. One of my, the last thing that I'll talk about, because I could probably talk about my job forever, is the coolest thing that I work with is we call them Godzilla robots. These Godzilla robots are 2 stories tall. We install them, we maintain them, we repair them, we teach them. They are so tall, but they pick up a whole vehicle like they're a feather, move them and place them all day long. It's beautiful. It's like a dance. So it's something to always be, I'm so proud of everything that I do. One of the benefits about the robots is they speak about how robots could be like the future and how they're going to run everything. But if you think about who installs them, who maintains them, who produces them, who programs them, that's skilled trades. So skilled trades, can be the future. And I definitely want my job to be part of that future. So of course, I stuck with skilled trades. As advice, honestly, no matter what you guys choose in your future, do something that you're passionate about, something you love, something that you enjoy to go to work and it's fun. Otherwise, it just makes life hard and we don't need hard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Can really hear the passion in your voice and really appreciate storytelling. I had no idea there was 2-story robots lifting cars in the Factory Zero, and now I really want to visit to see that happening. All right, so next up we have Carson Mata. Carson Mata is the Senior Manager of Sustainability and Communications at General Motors, leading dynamic communication strategies for GM's sustainability team and the company's overall environmental efforts. Carson previously worked at Consumer Reports as the Associate Director of Sustainability, Climate Change, and Clean Energy, where she built the nonprofit Strategic Communications Plan to amplify their advocacy positions around federal and state clean car standards. Prior to her work at Consumer Reports, Carson served as the Senior Congressional Liaison for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 2 office in New York City for 6 years, managing communications between the region and 41 congressional offices in New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Carson earned her MBA in International Studies and her master's degree in public administration with a focus on environmental policy from Fairfield University in Fairfield, Connecticut. All right, so Carson, I'm going to invite you into the space to share a little bit about how you've gotten to where you are today and any advice that you have for young people looking to enter this field.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anita. I'm going to attempt to share my screen so you guys have something to look at like Sarah did. Let me know if this works. I'm going to try. Let me know if
that's showing up.
Okay, cool. So just an overview. Thank you so much, Anita, for the introduction. And before I begin, just want to thank NWF for hosting these sessions. I think they're so important. And so it's really great to be able to connect with younger folks and folks that are kind of contemplating the next phase of their life, of maybe their career. This was an exciting time for me when I think back to high school, early college, and it's definitely something I think I could have used or benefited from back then. So I'm really excited to be a part of it, and so cool to learn about Rebecca, Sarah, and Bryce's journeys as well. It is hard to follow Rebecca's journey because it was so dang cool, but I'm going to try my best. Like Anita said, I'm, the Senior Manager of Sustainability Communications here at GM. So kind of a different path altogether, I think, than compared to my other panelists. I don't have a technical background. As you can see, I majored in international studies, and I think it wasn't until I got through my undergraduate degree until I realized that I had a real passion for sustainability and the environment in general. And that led me to kind of focusing on environmental policy for my master's. So it's been a wild ride so far, and very similar to Sarah, I would say that I'm still very much figuring out what I love about work, what, really excites me, what I maybe don't love about work. And I think, over time, continuing to understand those things about yourself and your career, it's only a good thing. Even if there are some negative aspects of the job, there will always be things that maybe aren't perfect or are not a great fit for you, but kind of banking those things in your memory bank is really useful as you navigate the rest of your career. So as you can see on the screen, there's a photo of me lifting weights. On the personal side, I just want to start by saying that I grew up an athlete. I was an athlete in a middle-class family. I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey, so grew up very much in the city, right outside of New York City. And I was fortunate enough to have athletic capability that gave me a lot of opportunities. And one of those was getting to go to college on a full ride scholarship. There's immense privilege in that. And I totally recognize that. Similar to Rebecca, though, you work your butt off, you graduate, and you're debt free. It's incredible. Athletic scholarship is one thing, but there are so many other types of scholarships and grants out there that are available to folks on the academic side through nonprofit organizations. So just sneaking in a little early advice that, there are a lot of opportunities out there. And if you need help to seek finding those, because putting in the work to apply for those things are really worth it when you graduate college. And like Rebecca mentioned again, like nothing like being, debt free and starting that chapter of your life, without that. So played volleyball through college, was really focused on my athletic career. And then I took a class, like an environmental studies 101 class. And wow, I was just blown away. We learned about like corporate lawsuits and hazardous waste cleanup. And I just kind of started to understand the universe of environmental cleanup. And that kind of led me into pursuing my master's degree and, focusing on environmental policy. And during my master's, while I was still a student, I applied for an internship at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And sort of weird timing, really felt like a meant to be moment. My grandfather that passed away, right the week before I was graduating from my undergrad degrees, he used to work he was in the Coast Guard, and then he was a postal service worker. So he always told me you should get a job with the government. You should just try, try it out. And I'm telling you, I never really even thought, what am I going to do after school? I knew I was really passionate about the environment and sustainability and sustainable practices. But then this opportunity came up and he passed away. And then I got this notice that I was selected to interview for the internship. And it felt very meant to be, because I was competing against, a bunch of other candidates. And for federal government jobs, our military and veteran folks out there actually they get put on a list and they get risen to the top of that list. They kind of get first pick. So I had to compete with those folks. I was basically on a second tier list to military or veteran competitors, and I got the job. And I always thought that was my grandpa doing me a solid. I had no idea it was going to lead me into, learning more about PR and media and connecting that to sustainability and environmental cleanup. Eventually, I kind of leaned into that, really got interested more on the policy side and connecting with congressional members in New York and New Jersey. That was my first, real official job with the EPA. And then, I just decided I had been there for 5 years and I loved it, but I was ready for a change. If you aren't sure what Consumer Reports is, I'm sure your parents know it because it has been around for over 80 years. They are, in publishing, they publish a magazine, they have a website, and it's basically the original, I want to say it's the original Yelp, but it's done by professional researchers and testers. They actually research and test products like washing machines and dishwashers and your Roomba vacuums and every product you can think of. Consumer Reports buys that product and then they test it and then they write a review. And it's a really credible organization. It's a nonpartisan organization. And I was lucky enough to be a part of what they started a couple of years ago now, was their sort of environment and clean energy vertical as part of their research. And so they're now testing the most sustainable products on the market. And they have this new, rating system where you can understand as a consumer just how good or efficient your product is. So if you're looking for a dishwasher or even a car, they do electric vehicle testing. They do other gas powered car testing. They have an amazing test track up in Connecticut. So I was really excited to be a part of that. And then this opportunity came up. So I mentioned they did car testing with Consumer Reports. I had never been really exposed to the auto industry until I joined Consumer Reports. And of course, like when you advocate, you think about advocacy work, right? And like in the mindset of sustainability or in the framing of sustainability, you always want to be pushing for clean regulations that encourage cleaner air, cleaner water, more protective, right, of nature. And so CR was always, scrutinizing automakers, like who has the best, cars or the most efficient cars, the cleanest cars that pollute the less or that emit the least amount of greenhouse gas emissions. GM constantly rose to the top of our conversations. And I feel like as we talked about and advocated for on the Hill, there was always this like notion like, yeah, GM is really leading the charge. Ford, others, they're always in the mix, but GM, I think, really impressed me in terms of the transition to electric vehicles. And I think most folks maybe on the call know that by 2035, we'll only sell EVs in the US for our light duty, like personal vehicles, which is a really cool and exciting thing for someone that's passionate about the environment and sustainability like myself. So that got me here. And I've been here for a little bit over a year, so nowhere close to Rebecca's experience. 26 years, hard to beat that, but it's incredible. And honestly, I have learned so much from my colleagues that have been with GM for a longer period of time. And I cannot appreciate folks with that institutional knowledge any more than I do, because there's a ton of new people at GM, but there's so much for us to learn about the legacy of the company. So wild ride so far. It's been a lot of fun. I'm still learning, I'm still growing. And if I could give some advice, it's don't say no to yourself before someone else can say no to you. So if you feel a little unsure or you feel a little uncertain, and you're hesitant to reach out or ask for help or pitch an idea or talk about something that you think might be cool, but you're a little scared or unsure about it, go for it. Don't shut an idea down in your own head before you can get it out there, because it's worth that shot. And you'll always learn in that process of putting yourself out there. And then another thing that our valedictorian said at Fairfield in his speech was, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So that uncertainty, if you're feeling like, gosh, I don't know what the next step in my life is going to be, some of the takeaways that I heard from Rebecca, you just keep pushing, and you believe in yourself. And if you're passionate and excited about what you do and you find it to be fun, it is worth the grind. And even if it's uncomfortable at some times, it's worth learning how to kind of sit with that. And it'll make you stronger for the rest of your career, because you all, I think, have a very long way to go in your journey. That's an exciting thing. So I can, like Rebecca, I could go on and on about what I do and how much I love this, but I just, thanks to the audience for being here, and NWF, Anita, David on the back end organizing us. It's a lot of fun to do these things. Just get out there and go for it. I'll pass it back to you, Anita. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carson, and for your enthusiasm and passion that you bring to this panel. We really appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right. Last but not least, we have Bryce Nash. Bryce is joining us as the Director of Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment Hardware Engineering at Terawatt Infrastructure in San Francisco. With more than 15 years of experience bringing electrification to the commercial vehicle industry, he is focused on bringing compelling solutions to customers that accelerate the world's transition to fleet electrification. Most recently, this means pushing new standards forward for megawatt charging systems and supporting EV charging equipment development for fleet customers. Previous to working in EV charging, Bryce spent many years at Daimler Truck working on high voltage powertrain development, starting with hybrid systems designed in partnership with teams in Japan, Germany, and the US. After getting a taste of international working, he and his family took a leap to work in Germany for several years while he led the technical development of Daimler Trucks' first in-house designed and manufactured high voltage battery. Bryce, thank you so much for joining us today. And well, you know what to do next. We'd love to hear about your career journey and anything that you'd love to share with the young people who are tuning in today.
Thanks for the introduction, Anita. It's super exciting to follow up on this crew because actually there's a GM tie-in. I have not worked at GM, but I'll get there in a minute. I grew up turning wrenches, so you heard about a lot of my engineering experience there in the introduction, but I grew up turning wrenches. My dad was an automotive mechanic, and I worked on cars for years. And, you know, in high school, that was what I did to make some side cash. And I grew up, you know, doing some local amateur racing and things like that. So there was always cars around me. I ended up going to an automotive engineering school at Kettering University, formerly known as General Motors Institute. So I've got a GM background there as well. My EV addiction. So I am an EV addict. I'm totally addicted to it. It actually started in college, but it was not part of my classwork. It was actually because they had a student racing program. They had two. There was one with the combustion engine and one with the electric motor. And I liked the technology side of the EV stuff. So that's how I actually got started in the electric car stuff. And it wasn't until I went into the professional world, I was working for Freightliner trucks. So I wanted to work in automotive and the West Coast. I ended up working on trucks, which actually wasn't that exciting for me at the time. But my company started getting into this idea. They wanted to make hybrid semi trucks. And I thought, well, this is a perfect fit for me because I love the technology and I learned to really appreciate trying to bring a tool for society. This makes everybody's lives better, not just for an individual having a cool car or something like that. So it was really motivating for me, and I really focused on that. This was interesting because I was actually the first person in the company that was 100% focused on this hybrid truck technology stuff. So it was uncharted territory. And that's something that I learned to really appreciate. And it was a big push for me. So you'll hear the same theme what we heard from some others. This was a stretch. I pushed myself to take on this added thing, but that was also for the company a big thing. They were trying to take on this challenge. And that's something that I think is really important. This was a challenging new technology. It was more responsibility for me, and also had more influence on the product. So that was cool, but it was a push. It was hard to do. And that took a lot of work. I would say when I'm thinking back to what I wish people had said to me, that was a really important part for my career and for understanding what I wanted to do and learning about myself. But I learned that you should always be willing to push yourself to take on the next challenge. You will grow into that. And it improves not only your company, of course, your company grows because of that push as well, but also improves you. And you as a person, you don't change overnight. It takes a long time, and you got to have that daily grind that was brought up earlier. You got to have that grind attitude of like, all right, but that's all part of training. It's all part of improving and growing. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And then also I wanted to bring up that as I worked at this big company and got more opportunities, I got the opportunity to work in international teams and work in really diverse groups. And I really learned to appreciate that. And I think that's something that I would strongly encourage when you're looking at companies, jobs, schools, whatever it might be. Look for those opportunities where there is a lot of diversity. I think that is very rewarding when you have a wide variety of people around you, different experiences and skills and things like that. And it was really exciting. So in any path you end up taking, I strongly encourage you to look for that. Look for diverse teams. That makes it more exciting also. And then another topic I want to bring on is that I've worked for many different companies. So some as few as 7 weeks and one for 17 years. So I worked for a lot of different companies over that time. And this is the theme that I've heard brought up today. I really appreciate. Always be looking for new opportunities in the world of sustainability. So I talked about my journey. I started actually in automotive powertrain engineering, which was combustion engine technology at the time. And I've gone this long arc with lots of different development from hybrid, mechanical integration, battery development, now charging stations. There's such a wide variety of things that you will come across when you're focused on sustainability in your career path. So what sustainability means will change again and again and again. And you should really be open to a wide variety of opportunities and always be willing to stretch yourself individually, stretch yourself a little bit to take on some new challenge. You'll be in high demand. When you've proven that you have the ability to take on those new challenges, you will be in high demand. And also it keeps things really exciting. You will get to take on new challenges, will keep you motivated. And I think that's a reoccurring thing I've heard again and again. So that's where I would close out. Look for opportunities where you push yourself, keep an open mind, and look for diverse teams.
Thank you so much, Bryce. Really appreciate that. Hearing a lot of similar themes throughout this panel today of just really pushing yourself, challenging yourself, taking on those opportunities, finding those jobs where you're not going to be replaced, with technology coming forth, and really making yourself a valuable employee when it comes to the workforce. So right now we're going to shift into the Q&A section. We have a question in the chat here from Mars. They have asked, if I'm looking to move somewhere new and find a new job in the environmental field, do you have any advice on where to look? And I'm sure that answer will look different because you're all coming to us from different aspects of the industry. But if anybody would like to unmute and answer, feel free.
I'll start. I'll throw something out there just to get the ball rolling. This is a very open question. Where should I look? I think the first thing I would say is, what stuff do you like? What things do you find intriguing? I have friends, for example, in the professional circle and personal friends that were interested in autonomous vehicles. What is self-driving cars? This seems like it's pretty cool technology. How does that work? And it was a personal interest in the beginning, and eventually their passion on the topic led them to keep pushing themselves and growing. And then they've become, professionals that really appreciate that. That's just an example. Of course, that's not necessarily the environmental field, but that's an example where they were personally motivated. I would say it's much easier to push your own limits and to push yourself to take on new skills if it's something you're interested in. I would say bad advice would be follow where there's high demand and money today, because that will change over time with different technologies and different supply and demand stuff going on. You never know. If it's not something you're motivated by, that'll be really hard to continue pushing yourself there.
I'll follow up, Bryce, and just totally agree that I think the first step is identifying what in the environmental field do you find interesting. Like Bryce said, there's so many directions, so many avenues you can go with it. You can go into water, into waste, into air. There's so many different media that you can focus on, but starting there, identifying that. And if you think they're all cool, that's great too. There's something, I'm a little bit of a generalist in this space. So there's something for everyone. And then, what is the craft? Is it PR and media? Is it engineering? Is it more on the technical side? Is it more on the communication side? And then I would say, once you've identified that, LinkedIn is such a great resource. They actually have internships. They have, part-time jobs. They have so many different filters that you can really use that tool to drill down into what you're looking for all over the world. Really, there are opportunities listed there. And then one step further, if you identify maybe a place that you're interested in and they have an opening, and you do a little bit more searching using the search tool in LinkedIn, you might be able to find either a recruiter or someone in HR that works in like either the internship space or even specifically recruiting for that role. And you can connect with them, shoot them a message. And, you know, those are some extra steps that have actually really yielded a lot of benefits for me, just even from a networking perspective, not necessarily even landing my any of the jobs that I have or that I've had, but just getting to know folks in the industry that you're really interested in is a great place to start. You never know where those connections can take you. So that's where I would start.
My one thing would be to be open, be absolutely open and try. There's nothing wrong with trying anything because you never know. Just like I started out with one journey that was completely opposite of actually what I ended up doing. And I love my job. So just be open and always try. And then blogs. You can go on blogs, read people's stories, find out, ask questions. People are very open, just, you know, and they might even spark another interest or give you an idea or a scope to go somewhere. Thank you.
And then just really quickly, a last note from me. I think if you're interested in the environmental field, there's so many opportunities these days. It's really a sector that has really grown in the last couple of years. And so echoing my fellow panelists here, try to find a position that, you know, you're really passionate about, something that you think you're going to enjoy, and then maybe focus on the location afterwards. You'll find these days that there are quite a few environmental related jobs, internships out there that I think you can try and find what you like first in terms of the job and then figure out the location afterwards. So don't focus too much on the location and where all of the jobs are, because as you can see from all of our backgrounds, as I'm based in Canada, Carson's in Jersey. I think Bryce said he's in San Fran. Rebecca and Anita are based in Detroit. So we're all around North America. And I think the job opportunities are it's really grown. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that advice. Mars says, thank you all. This was very helpful. All right. It looks like we still have some time for a few more questions. Let's move towards this question here. Have you had professional mentors? Who do you look to for advice or feedback on advancing your own career?
Am I going to be the first one again? Okay, I'll start the ball again. All right. I would say that's a great question. I really like that question because in the beginning of my career, I didn't even know what the hell is a mentor. What does this even mean? So I think looking for people that give you guidance is something that where I have had the best experience is people who care about you as a person and not about like, how do you climb a corporate ladder or what's the best degree to get, but they actually just care about you as an individual. And you have a personal connection there where they want to help you grow as a person. You know, usually it's someone that's older than you, but not always. Sometimes it's someone who's just like in your class or someone who's a friend. Look for those people who want to help you as an individual, as a person. I think those are the best mentors to have.
I guess we'll go in order of the last question too. So we got to keep this theme, panelists, okay? I'll jump in there. I definitely agree with Bryce. In my career, I've stayed really close to actually my leadership. So even when I've left jobs, I'll still catch up over text or a quick phone call to my old bosses. And even sometimes when I'm in work situations currently or considering, you know, other opportunities, I'll ask them because like Bryce said, they care about my development as a person. They have no kind of like dog in the fight for where I end up, and they just want to see me thrive. So if you have trusted friends or, you know, siblings, family members, your parents, look to them and even if you don't agree with the advice, and again, you feel uncomfortable, there's that little phrase there, just sit with that and try to understand why you might feel that way, and be open. Like Rebecca said, all of these things are connected. And I would actually say my mentor is my cousin, Mitchell, who works at Meta. We are the same age. He's 3 months older than me, but we have just gone through our career journeys together. We'll check in with each other. He'll like practice interviews with me. He's really my best friend, and always is someone that pushes me to try to get the best out of myself. And I know that I lean on him a lot to get that out of me. And so, like Bryce said, does not have to be someone, like a guidance counselor or someone at school that's necessarily older than you. If you've just got a good, buddy that's on the path with you, lean into that and really try to get the best out of each other. It makes it more fun to go down the journey.
With my case, I really leaned on my family. I was actually 18 when I started in my apprenticeship right out of high school. So, of course, coming right from home, they were my closest people that I went to. The second was actually my peers. So who was fellow people that were actually pursuing the same type of career. So going through the apprenticeship, the other tradespeople, and it's sort of like I became to have another work family. So between home family and work family, that's pretty much who I leaned on. And it works. It really works if you talk.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with all of my other panelists. I think for me, I've only had one formal mentor, like through work, I guess. But I think one of the most important things is finding somebody that you can really connect with and you can be completely open and honest with throughout your entire journey. And oftentimes, like people have said, like it ends up being your peer, your friend. For me, it's been my friends that have kind of gone through the same journey as me too. As I was starting out when I finished school, I was like a young female in like a male dominated industry. I was in like the engineering field. There weren't a lot of people that looked like me, that was my age. And so I heavily relied on my friends and, like we struggled together, we shared great experiences together and wins. And I think those types of people are what you need in your life. I think it's great having formal mentors who can help you to progress throughout your career. That is important, but I think you can have like different types of mentors in your life.
Thank you all so much for that. I love that mentorship can look all types of ways and all types of ages and all types of relationships. That is very true. And also very important to consider. I see David popping in here, so perhaps it might be time for a shift. We'll just do a little quick time check. Do we have time to do one more question, David, or should we pass it?
No, we have to go ahead and switch it over now.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. No, thank you for coming back on for that. So we do really appreciate all of your participation here as we're going to transition. Bryce, Carson, Rebecca, Sarah, we really appreciate your participation in this panel and sharing your insights with the young folks who are attending today. I did want to put out this question, in case someone is interested in learning more specifically from one of your career paths, if you would be open to receiving those questions. I know EdWF can receive those questions via email or perhaps another method, David, if you are receiving that for this panel, and we can reach out and put folks in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will go ahead and add the email address, which is simply ecoleaders@nwf.org. If you have further questions for the panel, send them there and we will make sure that they get them.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you all. And you all are welcome to hang out if you'd like and stay. Just go ahead and click the backstage button at the bottom of your screen. And we'll go ahead and move on to the workshop portion. And I'm very happy to introduce our career planning workshop presenter for today, Carly Queen. Carly Queen is a sustainable transportation specialist and civil engineer with AECOM in Atlanta, where she focuses on planning and engineering activities to advance multimodal transportation infrastructure and safety across Georgia. She supports the Georgia Department of Transportation and other clients in analysis and design of safer, more efficient transportation systems, drawing upon her degrees in mechanical engineering, civil engineering, and city and regional planning from Georgia Institute of Technology. Carly builds on her past experience working in data analysis and as a sustainability advisor and community organizer by bringing a data-driven yet community-oriented approach to problem solving and urban development. She was formerly the Southeast Campus Field Coordinator for National Wildlife Federation's Campus Ecology Program and has served in a variety of nonprofit leadership roles, including on the Generation Green Young Professionals Board of the Georgia Conservancy and as president of the Board of Directors for Groundwork Atlanta. Ms. Queen has been recognized with several honors and awards for her volunteer service, as well as academic and professional accomplishments over the last several years, including an Innovation in Safety Award from the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition and being listed in the Georgia Tech Alumni Association 40 Under 40. Carly, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll be here to help facilitate questions from the audience. Everyone, please continue to send in your questions. We'd like to make this as helpful and tailored for you as possible. Take it away, Carly.
Thank you, David. I'm going to share my screen and try to give you guys the real quick version of kind of my career path. I think it hopefully background to kind of help fill in and provide some insight and maybe some inspiration for the discussion. So just jumping in, high level, I grew up in Western North Carolina and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I currently live to pursue a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. And so I was actually very focused on kind of automotive engineering and sustainability while I was in school, and I'll talk more about that. But that actually led me then coming out of school to go kind of a non-traditional, non-engineering route and to join the National Wildlife Federation as their Southeast Campus Field Coordinator, working with campuses across the Southeast US on anything from student campaigns to address climate change or sustainable investing or sustainable dining on campus, to really working with college presidents as well as community colleges on green jobs training programs and a variety of other initiatives and major conferences and educational events. I then went back to Georgia Tech to get my master's degrees in civil engineering and city and regional planning. And that really led me into my current career today, where I'm coming up on about 10 years now, working with AECOM, currently as a sustainable transportation specialist. And so I'll share a little bit about my work and what I do in that role. But just in addition to my professional work, I currently serve on the board of directors for Groundwork Atlanta. And as I'll note in my kind of brief summary of my life here, I have served in a number of other nonprofit volunteer roles over the years. It's a really important part of my life, volunteering, and I definitely encourage everybody to get involved. It's a great way to get your foot in the door at a variety of different organizations and great ways to help in a variety of ways and in a variety of communities. All right, so I'll kind of skip through a lot of this, don't want to get too personal, but just to talk a little bit about my early life. I know we may have some folks who are still in high school, younger folks out there. I kind of realized my love for transportation really early on in life. And I leaned into that through some of my hobbies. Like I loved driving go-karts and riding in cars, and just, I fanned out on cars. Like I had car posters and just silly things like that. But I also, started my career pretty early with some part-time jobs while I was in high school and even before then. I grew up on a farm, so I've really been working kind of since I was about 5 years old. But, you know, when I got into high school and middle school, I really leaned into a lot of the math and physics subjects in school. I even got involved in like math club and physics club. And that really set me up to, you know, get into the STEAM and STEM careers. I also did a lot of kind of art as electives, and I was fortunate enough to go to a school that offered drafting classes, which that really, I took 2 or 3 years of drafting, which just really set me, again, you know, gave me an advantage, past experience coming into college and into my career that I could draw on and really build upon. And so when I went into undergrad, again, in mechanical engineering, I tried to really lean into my passion for transportation in a variety of ways, and get some good experiences that could help me later on in life and kind of help me explore that career, you know, those careers in automotive engineering and other kind of transportation related fields. And so one of the things I did, and actually it's kind of funny that there seems to be a General Motors tie across the whole panel, but I interned with General Motors back in, I think, 2006. I was in the weather strips department, so it was not maybe the most glamorous part of the organization, but, you know, coming in as an intern, I actually got a lot of great experience in data analysis. I was looking at warranty claims, and I think that actually kind of sparked some of my interest in data analysis and working with big data and working with databases that I lean on still today, working with crash databases and you know, somewhat messier data sometimes. I learned a lot of lessons early on then that have, I think, gradually brought me to the point where I am now. I also did some extracurricular activities, like I joined a student competition team, the GT off-road team, which does the SAE Mini Baja races, and we participated, and I was actually a driver in the Mini Baja East competition my sophomore year, I think, of college. And so that was just a really fun, lots of fun. I actually learned, you know, physical parts manufacturing and so many aspects of how you design and can, you know, your design is going to impact the performance of your vehicle, and all of these things that really are very relevant to the automotive industry. I'll just note, you know, I think there's other kind of transportation related, more maybe sustainability focused groups and teams that you can join out there. Like there's Solar Car, there's EcoCar. So now even more so than when I was in school, there's just a lot of great opportunities to both get exposure to the transportation side, but also the sustainability and environmental kind of side of transportation. I also, you know, realized actually kind of through a work experience that I really, really was interested and passionate about sustainability. And so coming out of that kind of summer of working full time as a canvasser, actually, for groups like Sierra Club and Environment Georgia, I started a new organization on campus, which was a great opportunity for me to step into more of a leadership role. And it was called Students Organizing for Sustainability, and it's still around on campus today. SOS, you know, we did a number of different things, such as working with our campus dining program to do more sustainable waste management, more sustainable sourcing, better vegetarian options. We talked about a number of different initiatives, and many of those were implemented and have continued to kind of grow, and they've built upon that for many years now. We also did things like started a kind of bike recycling program on campus, where basically the bikes that were abandoned kind of each semester used to kind of get mostly trashed, you know, put in the dumpsters. And so we were actually able to take the ones that were salvageable and work with volunteers, give people the opportunity to actually fix those bikes up, and they could either volunteer to earn that bike, or we would donate it to people who, you know, people in need, and to just provide better access to affordable bikes in the student body as well as off campus. And we started the first community garden on campus. And so just, we did a variety of different initiatives, you know, Earth Day events, including like sustainable fashion shows. And it was just a great, really opportunity for me to get that leadership on campus in a way that, you know, we weren't having to manage huge budgets, but we got funding from the school to go ahead and do, you know, our programming each year. It was really a great learning experience, and honestly set me up, along with some of the other work that I did. And I'll just note, if you get a chance to do a summer abroad anywhere, do it. It's amazing. But that really set me up, I think, to be well qualified for my role coming out of school, which was with the National Wildlife Federation. I had all of that experience as an undergrad working with, campus administrators, working with other students, organizing people into networks that were advocating for change and for more sustainability on campus. And, to improve also the community off campus. And it seemed like a natural fit, and that really that's where my passion lied. So that's really where I leaned in. And I worked with NWF for several years, really had an amazing time in that role. And also, got involved, continued to be involved as a volunteer in a number of roles, as well as, volunteering or applying to and participating in opportunities such as the UNFCCC COP15, which is the climate conference. This was back in, I think, 2011. So several COPs ago, but, got to go to Denmark, Copenhagen, and really, again, kind of see the international perspective on climate, just meet so many amazing people, and really, it was a privilege and an honor to represent US youth as a delegate at that conference. Coming out of my work with NWF, I kind of did feel still very drawn to engineering and taking on a technical role. So I took a few roles prior to going back to graduate school. But once I, started, I really knew, I think, what I wanted to do. And it was actually through some of my experience studying abroad in Europe that I realized maybe automotive was not kind of the direction I wanted my career to take. Maybe I really, really wanted to focus on infrastructure. And so that's really what led me to civil engineering and city and regional planning, which really, it's about how the environment sets up the system that people then, engage with on a daily basis, and that system really leads to the decisions that we make. And so if you provide a system that has, a strong transit backbone that provides safe spaces and comfortable spaces for people to walk and bike, people will use those modes. But if you don't, then, people may feel kind of trapped in their cars, or even trapped in their homes. Maybe they feel like they can't even really go anywhere. They're not very mobile. And so, I really felt like that was my calling, and it has turned out so far to be, I think, the case. So I finally kind of found the degrees that would give me the foundation I needed to succeed in the world of city planning and civil engineering. And so just to kind of make way so that we're not spending too much time on this, I'll just touch base a little bit on what I've done now in that engineering career. I started as an intern while I was in grad school with a company called URS that later merged with AECOM and kept the AECOM brand. So I've been there for about 9 years now. I was a transportation planner and traffic ITS associate. And so, just really doing a lot of the traffic modeling, as well as some planning work, and just a lot of work with our safety team here in Georgia, especially supporting the Georgia Department of Transportation and other clients in their safety and Vision Zero and multimodal kind of efforts. And then I really, worked with my leadership team to identify that sustainable transportation was really my passion. This is something I was absolutely committed to, and I wanted to lean into more and make it clearer kind of that that's my focus through my title. So, I think about 5 years ago now, I stepped into the role of sustainable transportation specialist. And that has led me to where I now kind of lead a lot of our multimodal safety work focused on pedestrians and bikes, and a little bit on transit and just kind of complete streets, if you're familiar with that term. Some of our work has led to some great recognition, which I really appreciate. We got an Innovation and Safety Award, as David had mentioned, from an organization now called Propel ATL. They're locally focused, and they do a lot of bike and pedestrian advocacy work here in Atlanta. And I've also gotten involved, not just, on the technical side of the work, but I think it's also just important to mention, there's other opportunities to kind of step up and grow your career and get involved in making your workplace a really great place to work, a really successful work environment for everybody. So, recruiting has been an area that I've been eager to get involved with and have stayed involved with for several years, especially actually coming out of school. That's a great way to kind of step up, continue to bring great talent to the organization. But, since you're maybe just a few years out of school, staying connected with your alma mater is a great way to just, keep that pipeline open. And you may know people who are still in school who are a year or two from graduating once you're already in a full-time role. And if there are people you want to work with, try to bring them to the team if you have opportunities to do so. Also marketing to try and bring in more work. It's a great opportunity. And I've been involved, especially this year, in our Great Place to Work kind of social committee. So doing a lot of fun events at AECOM for our local office, including like we went and saw an Atlanta Hawks game earlier this year, which was really, really fun. Go Hawks, just made it into the playoffs. But yeah, so just to share okay, this is kind of showing you, this is some of our Great Place to Work activities. But just real quick, a little bit of what I kind of do, just so you get a better idea maybe, and can judge whether this might be a career path that you're interested in. Of course, I always just say, try a lot of different things and see what you really like and lean towards that. You don't have to have the answers right away, but be open to a variety of different opportunities and, see where you really feel motivated and passionate to continue doing that work and communicate that to your leadership as well. So, I really love that I do both planning and engineering, because in a lot of ways I get to kind of help bridge the divide between those groups, and sometimes they speak different languages. So really helping to make that a smoother transition and to come up with plans also that are really feasible. They're really able to be implemented effectively. Having the engineering side already in mind of what that needs to look like really can help to set up your projects for success. I also like that it kind of traffic engineering really blends the civil and the mechanical backgrounds that I have. And again, building on the data experience I had at General Motors and all these years later, also the engagement work that I did at NWF, how does that all kind of come together when you're doing city planning, which obviously can and should involve the community. You're also doing that data analysis to really provide the best information that you can to make informed decisions. And so, that's just me in our office. That's actually our old office format. But anyway, that was a Halloween in the office. So this is just, some of the data analysis that I have helped with. This was looking at pedestrian and cyclist injury crash density. And so we can, find areas like what's circled in red, that are kind of major hotspots and focus our projects for safety improvements in those locations. We also, look at kind of the bigger picture. This is a sheet that we use to summarize a variety of data inputs, like the crash data is shown, traffic volumes are shown, how many lanes, distance between crossings, but we also have different plans that have been developed over the years. Where do those fall? What portions of the corridor might they impact? This is, looking at traffic operations and just a variety of different, crash patterns and other projects that may be moving forward to kind of give that high level view. So this is kind of part of that communication and data analysis and trying to put it all together in some kind of document that might make sense to some folks. We also dig in on, like I talked about, that messy crash data. We have to kind of take what is sometimes chaotic data that is generated from police reports and try to make sense of it in a way that we can use it to really come up with the best, most applicable safety solutions for, in this case, we're looking at a particular intersection in Atlanta. And then, we come up with solutions to help provide safer traffic operations for everybody, right? Not just the people who are in the vehicles, but also people who might be walking or biking. This project would basically take a 4-lane undivided roadway with no bike infrastructure and convert it with a road diet to free up 1 lane of space for bike lanes, as well as to make space for center turn lanes where there weren't any generally previously. And so, this is just one way, again, that we can provide better environments in the future for people to be able to more easily and safely choose to bike or to walk or to take transit. And so the last thing I'll just mention is, community service, always be looking for opportunities to volunteer. That's often the easiest way to kind of get connected to either campus or community organizations. I think when I finished grad school, my superlative was something along the lines of most likely to be president, vice president, or, something of like everything. And so, when I saw opportunities to kind of help out, whether it was organizing events as like a programs chair or helping with communications, I stepped up. I said, yes, I guess maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I like to help out where I can and where I feel like I can provide value. So that's something that I've consistently done. And I think it has set me apart in a lot of ways in my career and helped to advance my career as well. All right, so that's a bit about me, and I think we were doing all right on time here. Let's see. Okay, probably maybe just 15 more minutes. But we wanted to kind of open the floor up, I guess, for some discussion. I've got kind of some tips and things I wanted to share as far as these discussion points. And then we'll have, I think, some time for Q&A if there's any additional questions. But also would welcome, others to from the panel and anybody else who wants to weigh in if you have anything to add to any of this. But I'll just get started with the top question of kind of how you gain experience by implementing projects on campus or in your community. And I think I shared a couple examples of that through my little life journey presentation. But, I think it's great to try and do a little of both if you can, but really lean into your interests and your passions. I knew that I was super excited about learning how to build an off-road vehicle and drive an off-road car. And so I immediately, stepped up to join that club, I think freshman year, and just learned a huge amount that really probably set me up then to get the connections I needed to start that internship with General Motors. And that really set me on a great path forward. There's a lot of career relevant, if you're interested in transportation, there's tons of different transportation focused projects that you can do. But, also there's a lot that may overlap with sustainability work, but there's also several other areas, you could join an advocacy club on campus that's really just focused on climate or sustainability issues. Maybe you love doing community service and, so just getting out and working in like community gardens or, helping to feed the homeless, whatever makes you feel good. I mean, honestly, volunteering is probably one of the best things that I can do for my mental health in my life. And so whatever makes you feel good, and, especially if you can see that it has a positive impact on your community and your fellow humans and life forms on this earth, like definitely do it. And also, when you're looking to get involved in community affairs, I think the best place to start is right in your local community, so whether that's where your campus is or, where you personally live or even where you work, all of those are your community. And so I think it's always best and most effective to start there. And then, a lot of times you can grow your reach and maybe you impact your neighboring communities, or maybe your example inspires other communities. But, it's always, I think, the best place to start. And of course, y'all feel free to interrupt. So the next one, I just wanted to kind of give some high level marketing or not marketing tips, but networking tips. And these are just, networking is another thing. A big part of it is just showing up, right? You never know who you're going to meet. You never know who's going to be there. But I showed up to kind of a smaller networking event for my downtown neighborhood association last night, and I got to meet the commissioner of the New Atlanta DOT, who was speaking, and, got to introduce myself. And so you just never know who you're going to meet. And if you don't show up, then you do know you're not going to meet anybody. So, showing up's the first step. But once you're there, you don't always have to focus on work. You don't always have to immediately ask, well, what do you do? Or, a lot of events are more professionally focused, and that's certainly appropriate, but it's always, I think, really good to just get to know people as human beings. A question that I like to ask a lot of times is, what do you like to do for fun? And so, you get all sorts of different answers to that one, but it's a little bit lighter, and it just kind of gives you a way to open yourself up to meeting new people. I'm always tempted when I go to networking events, if I see people I know, those are kind of the first people I go up to, and that's great. You want to maintain those relationships, but you also want to make sure that you're being open and that you're kind of, working the room a little bit, that you meet several people. You don't just talk to the same person the whole time. Usually these networking events are meant to kind of mix and mingle. And so be sure that you're doing that. One thing that I like to do a lot of times is if I see like a group with an odd number of people, I'll kind of insert myself into that group, because I can kind of catch that, third or fifth person or whatever, and maybe engage them in conversation, whereas they might have just been kind of listening and not as engaged otherwise. And then just, in addition to telling people about yourself, which everybody's going to be, excited to hear about, you want to make sure that you're doing a really good job of listening, and, that you're asking questions that you can learn, about the person that you're talking to, but also that shows genuine interest. That really helps people come away from the interaction feeling like better about it, and that they, hopefully want to get to know you more. And so those are some of my kind of tips. A great place to do a lot of this networking is through professional associations. I started as a student, you saw that I was a student leader for several of the student chapters, Women's Transportation Seminar, Georgia ITE, which is Institute of Transportation Engineers. I also participated in like ITS and some of the other, civil engineering groups. And so, and Student Planning Association was another one. So, it's great to start as a student and then stay involved as much as you can. And even, even if you aren't necessarily an active member of the student chapter, it is a great thing to do. You can attend events, you can apply to scholarships. I was able to get, financial support through several scholarships that I applied to. But again, if you don't apply, you're already taking yourself out of the running. So try to find those opportunities and take advantage of them. I also volunteered at one point to speak at a major, it was, I guess, the annual meeting for one of these kind of larger professional associations. And that's actually kind of how I met my boss today. That's kind of in many ways how I kind of got my foot in the door to get an internship with URS. Was being willing to go up there in front of like 200 people and talk about gondolas, which is kind of a passion of mine, but something, not everybody takes seriously, but, sometimes you just got to be brave and put yourself out there. And then, just stay involved, especially as you're coming out of school. A lot of times you get the like reduced rates and there's incentives for you to stay involved and, early and get involved in, volunteering, whether it's on different committees, or I like to volunteer for conferences and events, because then sometimes it justifies me getting to go to those events. And then, just also, like I said, I volunteered to speak in front of the whole Georgia ITE group. And that really, I think, gave me a lot of great opportunities. But also don't be afraid to step up and take on leadership within these organizations, even as a young person. It's always appreciated, and it really can give you great demonstration of your leadership skills to really advance your career in a number of ways as well. And I think this last one I had is just in-demand technical skills. I'm staying very general with this one. There's a lot of specific tools and things that you may need as part of certain jobs. Like I love GIS platforms that I use, and I'm always kind of learning different new tools. And we have a lot of modeling tools that we do in traffic engineering. But those a lot of times are, pretty job specific, and they'll be able to do on the job training for you for those tools. So you don't necessarily have to have exposure to all of these things coming out of college. However, if you do get a little bit of opportunity to be exposed to, it's CAD, GIS. I always encourage folks to do GIS, even if it's not required. I think it's a really powerful platform. This geographic information systems, I might be getting that wrong. But it's basically geospatial data, and it, allows you to do mapping, but it allows all this kind of geospatial analysis. It's just very cool. but, basic data analysis, things like make sure you're getting really competent in Excel if you want to go into some of these technical fields. That is really important. That's one that we use more than you might realize. So get comfortable with it. But also, just keep yourself open, and also just try to stay on top of kind of new and innovative tools and technologies that might come out there. There's a lot of free tools that actually are really useful planning platforms that are designed for not just planning professionals, but also for community members. So they're very user friendly. Even those can be basic tools that you can learn and you can, put on your resume and that show that'll set you apart, that you know how to adopt these tools and use them in ways that can benefit your projects. And then, maybe a little bit less of a technical skill, but just really learning to manage your time and energy. This has been a struggle for me throughout most of my life, just, pushing myself so hard, especially I'm so passionate about the work that I do. But, sometimes it's easy to go too far and you can burn yourself out. And so, just being mindful of learning to manage your time in a responsible way, manage your energy so that you can have consistent results and not burn yourself out, and you can really, bring your best self every day to your work and to your life. That's really important for a happy life. So that's all that I had, but I'm happy to keep the discussion going for however much longer we have here, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Carly. Yeah, you kept answering the question that I had written down to ask every time you advance to the next slide. So thank you for that. I do have one question, and it's about kind of trends in the transportation sector. So we heard earlier with the panel, and you hear all the time in the press with EV cars and the importance of EV cars. And not to downplay that, but you have a pretty broad background in transportation. So what other trends or avenues or technologies do you see as a great opportunity for young people to consider as they're planning out their careers?
Great, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, what inspired me to want to be an automotive engineer was the opportunities with EVs. And just, let's create the most amazing, like still really fun to drive, but like super environmentally friendly and just ever more sustainable kind of automobile. And I love that. That is absolutely a worthy goal. But that alone is not going to solve the problems of traffic, for one, and how we design our cities around cars currently is driven by the fact that so many of us do drive our cars on a daily basis. And so 2 things, I think, the shift toward more and better facilities for active transportation, I think needs to be emphasized more in conversations around climate, conversations around quality of life, affordability. I just think it's to me the biggest gap that here in the US, we just really, even in our most dense cities, other than, I think maybe New York really does a good job. But, we just don't provide really decent and safe spaces for people to walk and bike. And we don't, in a lot of places, have much in the ways of a transit system. And part of what you really need to get those really world-class facilities like they have in many other cities around the world is density. And so, that's really where like the whole land use conversation comes into play. And that is very, very tied to transportation. Like, I think one of the best things that we can do is really transit-oriented development and densifying around, where there is existing high capacity transit infrastructure. Like here in Atlanta, we have a rail line, the MARTA rail, that actually connects many different neighborhoods. And it's great, but it's very expensive to operate and maintain, and even more expensive to grow it, especially if you don't have the kind of ridership that can sustain that kind of operation and growth. So we need more people living within walking distance of those facilities. And then, I think we also need to think about some middle capacity modes that can support, that might be maybe a better fit for where a lot of US cities are today. So one of the things that this was actually kind of my master's thesis looked at aerial gondolas. And I mentioned this earlier, and I know it's a little bit far-fetched for some folks, but actually in cities around the world, Medellin, I showed a picture earlier, was one of the first to really implement gondolas as part of their urban transportation mass transit system. And in that case, they were serving a specific purpose as it related to terrain and just being able, that was like the only mode you could really get people in down to the valley where the jobs are and where the light rail was. But, you know, you don't have to have that kind of terrain for them to work. They can really be a great solution that's more affordable than even like streetcar and heavy rail, you know, and these bigger systems that really are meant to move tons of people. If we don't have those kinds of densities, we can save a lot of money and perhaps expand our system a lot faster if we are open to some of these, like, you know, bus is one thing, bus rapid transit's great, but this is actually kind of even gonna be more convenient and more accessible than that, because it's kind of a system that's just always available. You can walk up and get on, you don't have to wait for the bus. And so I think of it as a premium kind of middle capacity transit mode that, you know, let's get some of these lines feeding into the larger system. And, you know, let's be open to creative solutions like that. It's sad to see that, I mean, literally dozens of countries, dozens of cities and countries outside of the US have these integrated into their urban transit system. But, you know, for whatever reason, we don't like to, no city wants to be the first in the US, and we don't like to do things that other US cities haven't done. So, you know, I'd challenge us to be a little bit more open-minded about what we think is transportation and how we are building our multimodal system, because it doesn't have to always be the same old tools.
For sure. Yeah, I had forgotten. I think there was one proposed connecting Arlington, Virginia to Georgetown, Washington, DC before COVID. And I hope that that gets resurrected. We are just at time now. So I just wanted to thank you again for sharing your story and your advice with the folks in attendance and the folks in our EcoLeaders community. We'll be sharing this recording with everyone that has registered, as well as our YouTube audience. So thank you again for participating, and everyone. Make sure you tune in again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we have an interview with a muralist, an artist from Mexico, and that one will be presented in Spanish, but we'll have English interpretation and captions. So I hope you all come back tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carly.